still on Rule 15. This has to do with, let's do section, we'll do section C. So section C, the language there, citizens desiring to speak at public speak shall sign up in the clerk of council by 6:45 p.m. on the evening of any regular council meeting on a first-come, first-served basis, except that persons who have spoken during any of the preceding 4 meetings will speak last after all other speakers. So the first time that I filled in for President Bates, I went through the rules. I tried to do this. This is a nearly impossible thing to do because you've got 15 minutes between when you get the sheet of public speaks and when the meeting starts. You have to go back now 4 meetings. You have to match up, make sure that you can read the names, match it up, and then you are jumping around in the order.
No,
so
we never did it.
We've never done it before, no.
We don't enforce that.
So we never enforced it. I try to. The concern is you can very easily miss somebody because you're going back and forth. It doesn't prescribe the order of which you do that move if it's not chronological. It's just, I think that the idea behind this was to allow somebody who hasn't come to speak to be able to speak first and be able to be heard. But this is an unworkable rule, and it should go.
I disagree.
Well, we've never enforced it once.
Yeah, but I disagree that it's not enforceable because last meeting, Roger Gates spoke. The meeting before that, Vicky Putney spoke. The meeting before that, Kim Bell spoke. I can tell you who spoke first at every meeting for the last 5 meetings. So it's not impossible to enforce that.
It's not so much about knowing who spoke. It's about, all right, let's say you have 2 sheets. So you've got, I don't know how many is on the sheet. Let's say you got 13 speakers. And you have 2 people in the back that did not speak, 1 person that did. And you have 4 or 5 people in front who spoke. So you have to mark them. So I mark them on the sheet. And then you have to go down, then you go to this sheet. And you're jumping around. And the same markings that I used, hindsight, the same markings I used to identify that this person spoke last week and that they're not in this order were the same markings that I was using to check mark off that this person spoke. And so then I was in a scenario where you've got a bunch of speakers and I don't know who I marked as someone who spoke and someone in this meeting, or who I marked that they need to go last after everyone else spoke because they spoke in the previous meeting.
Because let's say the 6 speakers that spoke last week. So what order do they go in? It is possible.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's not possible.
It's possible to do, but it's difficult.
But we haven't done it, and the question, and we'll get to some other thoughts, is there a better way to ensure that people who haven't spoken get to be heard, and people who get to speak regularly would not have, that these people that come once a year, to be heard, would be able to be heard before people that come all the time. So, but you're right, it could be done, and we talked about it, we haven't done it. It could be done, it would take some jostling around.
And a better way, I think, to accomplish the spirit of that would be a different rule change pertaining to this. So the one recommendation is you just remove the first come, first serve, except that persons who have spoken during any of the preceding meetings, just remove that completely. And you add a different rule. So this different rule would say, in section B, so citizens shall be permitted to speak 1 time during public speaks per week. You change that to citizens shall be permitted to speak only 1 time during public speaks every 4 meetings, which accomplishes, I think, the spirit of what section C was trying to do, but does so in a manner that is much more clear and easier to take care of. So it allows the people who haven't spoken previous meetings to be able to have their voices heard. And it does what I think the intended purpose of section C was, which is
Akron does it too, doesn't it?
Akron, yes. So other cities do this, where you're allowed to speak 1 time every certain amount of meetings. Columbus has different rules like this, Akron has rules like this. So it does what Section C tries to do, but does it in a clear, well understood manner. So thoughts on that? So the proposed idea is you drop first come, first served basis.
Except the person, yeah, spoken.
Yep, in Section C. And you change the verbiage from every week to every 4 meetings in Section B.
We should have did this years ago when Dick Drake kept coming back here talking about trees, and I had to listen to him every week talking about it. However, I can remember 2 of our colleagues were regulars at public speaks. Mr. Scaglione over there would speak every other week. Remember Kimbrough every week, maybe every other week.
I don't either.
And ultimately, the reaction of our colleagues and the results they got by speaking up here frustrated them enough to run for office and become one of us. So,
I would say that on the argument of why once every 4 meetings. So it's not meant to be, public speaks is not meant to be Toastmasters Club, where you're speaking to speak. It is about the actions that we're doing that pertain to things that affect the public, to come to speak about whether they're for an ordinance, against an ordinance, how it would affect them. It's not meant to be content creation.
But when has it not been? Even when we were bombarded with the cat people, nobody comes down, nobody will ever flood council chambers
and say, you know what? God damn you, Member Morris, you do a great job. And Babcock, I love the way your hair looks. No, they come in, man, they're upset about something. So I don't know how we limit what that content is.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion,
yeah.
is content.
Right,
but
but
we're
we're
not
not
limited.
happy about something. Yeah, I agree. It's gotta pertain to what we do here. I agree with that.
And it's not necessarily, it's not limiting someone's ability to address us. But most cities, a lot of cities, what they do is it's a first, as it says in Rule C, first come, first basis, first 10 speakers, and that's it. They cut it off at 10. So if you're not one of the first 10, you don't speak. Other ones say 30 days. You get to come once every 30 days.
Well,
It is.
and I think too, that this 4 is pretty common in most of the larger cities. But that doesn't mean, obviously, robots, it could be every other, for example. As it is. Yeah, so like you're saying, you could go to every other meeting, you could go to, you could keep it the same. But I think one of the problems is a lot of our regular speakers that used to come aren't coming anymore because it's just gotten kind of overwhelming. And a lot of our seniors and stuff have said too, you know, it's just getting too overwhelming for me to be able to come and address.
In the last 14 years, we used to have a lot of regulars here. And God rest their souls, most of them passed away. But if I were to have looked at David Morgan and told him, you can only speak once a month. And quite honestly, he did not have a lot of nice things to say to us, but I always enjoyed it. I mean, I honestly enjoyed when some of those folks got up. Okay, so maybe I don't agree with what's being said nowadays, but I'm kind of with Rick. I don't know if I would really like to slam the door and say you get 1 day a month to come in and speak in line.
If that's, So if that's too close, is it the idea of not allowing it every week, or is 4 too long? Is 2? So what do you think about every other meeting?
It seems like it's limited. I don't know. I mean, I don't like what people say sometimes, but that's just the way life is.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't agree with a lot of it, but they have a right to speak, and I don't just want to stop somebody to say you can't speak when it's wrong.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, I told Justin nicely last week on the phone, some days, man, I really like what you got to say, and other days, I just want to take you out in the parking lot and kick your ass after I'm done. I mean, he does, he pushes your buttons one day, and then some days he gets up there and he actually makes sense, but
Well, let's talk
It's-
about two
it's-
of the other things that
right.
are within, well, it's not anybody's right, you know, we don't have
Yeah.
our public space.
right, we don't.
Yeah, and the commission, and a lot of cities
A lot of
don't.
city councils do not.
But, so there were two other thoughts about that, if that isn't something, so city, you go, man, we don't like that, okay? So those were taken from other cities, there
So-
were other thoughts.
Yeah, so Section A. Section A currently says that public speaks portion of the agenda shall be dedicated to allowing the public at large to speak on issues pertaining to city business at each regular council meeting. City business is tricky because it's a hard one to enforce. So the idea would be changing the word issues pertaining to city business at each regular council meeting to items on council's current agenda. So public speaks comes before we vote. We are the legislative body of the city. We do not deal in courts. We don't deal in hiring and firing outside of our office. Our authority is very narrow, and it is on passing ordinances that are on our agenda. As long as we have had a forum that allows the topics addressing us at our meeting to be on anything, it implies that we have control over everything. And a significant amount of things that we have heard have absolutely not only nothing to do with the city, they don't have anything to do with our body. We are narrow and restricted in what we have authority to do. And so when the public comes to talk to us, public speaks, the spirit of public speaks is about the items that are on the agenda that are in front of us at this time. They will affect residents. They will affect people who either do business in the city or live in the city. And that we should be able to hear if they're for it, if they're against it, how it will affect them, so they can influence the way that we weigh in these issues. That's the spirit of public speaks. And when we moved it to the end of the meeting, one of the concerns of doing that is after we vote. So and this happened when we did the landlord registration fee. People came to speak to us about an issue that we were taking action on that was going to directly affect them. It was moved to the end. They were unable to address that by the time we voted. And so we had to postpone that vote so we could hear what they had to say. So I think it's a more appropriate wording than city business.
Who's gonna be the police?
The same that, yeah.
That's the interesting thing. Agenda is easy because, not easy, I shouldn't say that, but it's easier. We can see what items are on our agenda. And if there's something that is absolutely not related, then we know. City business is a very nebulous term because if I live in the city and I'm upset about something, even if it doesn't produce that city business, I'm your constituent, you know, and when you start to have to parse that out, and we've talked about this, and it may start out one way and end up another way, you know, so it's a very, very difficult thing. And we've had certain things that probably should have been covered, that just went wildly astray and were not about city business.
So who's gonna tell the person when
It
to
would
start
have,
speaking?
it would have to be the president, it would have to be me.
Yeah.
And, you know, we try to keep things within a purview. I think Akron does agenda, right? Isn't that?
They have, so Columbus has restrictions on things that are in front of committees. Some only will allow you to address council during a committee meeting about what's in the committee. There's a lot of narrow, other cities are much more narrow with these things than we are. And they do it because public speaks is about what council what their authority is, what they're about to rule on, and how it's going to affect people in the city and outside the city that does business within the city. I have tried to do point of orders on city business. It's not easy because a police issue that happened in 1970 in the city of Canton, is that city business? It probably is. It's hard to say. Or if something did happen in the city, public speaks can sometimes go to city stuff and then not city stuff, and city stuff and not city stuff. So it's not an objective, easy, clear-cut thing. It's very subjective, and this would make it highly objective, where you would outline when you sign up the item that is on the agenda that you are concerned with, and that's what you would speak about. And it's clear. There's no subjectivity to it, and if we can get subjectivity out of our rules and make it more objective, more black and white, it is much more easier to both allow the public to address their elected officials while making sure that the rules are followed. Subjectivity, trust me, I mean, this is not, there are lots of gray areas that we have that make this difficult in real time. So thoughts on this?
So my phone rings.
Somebody warned me, bitching about a pothole.
Yeah.
Do I tell them that's not my wheelhouse? It's not my authority?
It is absolutely your authority.
Well, no, technically it isn't.
No,
It's an-
it's absolutely your authority.
No.
The question
Okay,
is.
pothole is an administrative task handled by the administration. Well, we take those calls.
Because
True or
we-
false? True or false?
Well,
We take
no,
those
you
calls.
have the
True.
ordinances to patch the
Correct.
roads.
I
You give
have,
them the money.
but we're right.
Yeah.
We fund everything.
But that's not what we're talking about, Frank.
Well,
That's
but
what we're
I'm
talking about.
leaving, I'm leaving, I'm playing attorney, I'm leaving. So the point is, if we're not paving, no paving's being passed on that agenda. Or we're not allocating any money for high grass or any other complaints that our constituents may have.
Yeah.
They can't come down here and say,
No, so they, yeah, no,
go-
they absolutely can come down here. But as we have seen, when you address something in public speaks about a pothole you have on, almost immediately, the president can say, the city service director can come and talk to you. Public speaks is not the ideal forum for that, because every person that you need to get that problem addressed is here. Correct. All you have to do, you can have a sign-up sheet next to it that says, what's your name, what's your address, your contact information, the problem that you're having. The
And a lot of
next
times they
day,
address it before
they even have public speaks.
before they even speak.
Because Dave Docker taught me this. I try to look at the public speaks lineup to see if I have a resident in my ward who has signed up for a problem, and I will go talk to them about that and get it solved. And that's the form. It is a better way of getting it solved. That can still, and very easily can still be accomplished by having a sign-up sheet of what is your city problem. And if it's not handled that night, someone in their office can call them the next day and put them in contact with the right person, which is essentially what we do to friends. A resident calls one of us with a pothole or an issue. We don't fix it. We are simply the liaison that connects them with the department that fixes it. And we do the same thing here at City Council. Our body, our authority is not to fix their problem. Our job as ward councilmen and at-large council people is to serve as the liaison that when they have an administrative problem, we connect them with the correct person to get it taken care of. None of us are filling potholes, and we don't take council action at that moment to fill the pothole.
I love you like you're my own kid, but you are so fucking far out of touch on that statement, John, and it's not our responsibility. Those people in Ward.
No, I'm not saying it's not a responsibility. It is
No,
absolutely.
Yeah, but you said
I'm saying
we're
it's not-
nothing more than a
it's-
liaison,
no.
dude, and that's
Our-
not the way it works in
our
it
legislative-
doesn't work in your ward that way either.
Our legislative authority, we do not fill potholes.
No,
You
We
don't have a shovel, you
connect-
don't have a shovel.
We connect.
Yes.
We connect.
I know you picked up
We,
cards.
we connect the
I know
person
you-
that has a problem with the department that can solve it for them, to get it solved, and then we make sure that that resident's concern was solved.
I don't believe we do. I believe that we contact that department on their behalf, and we facilitate everything all the way through.
But that is, I
So
guess,
in their eyes,
yeah. So,
in their eyes, we are the one that filled that pothole. In their eyes,
but
we are the one that
yes,
got.
but we are serving as a liaison to them. Yes.
See what I'm saying?
No, I think it's
we don't do
no,
it.
I think it's a semantics over words, but I think we're saying the same thing. The liaison part of this is that we connect people with a service that they need.
Right.
And but that is outside of the legislative authority that we do on a Monday night. And we say it's
Exactly.
Our Monday nights are ceremonial in nature. Our real work is Tuesday through Sunday, when we are putting people into contact, or we're getting the information to the department necessary to solve the problem that they have.
There's one thing you're getting hung up, is
You look at the
keep saying.
legislation, you look over it, you decide if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
So Monday's not just ceremonial,
It's the voting process. It's the legal work that we do that makes it official. The Tuesday through Sunday, to your point, it's the looking at, is this a good thing or a bad thing? It is, I have a resident that has flooding on their street, and I need to get it to Chris Barnes so he can go out and look at it, so he can start working on the thing, and then fill them in on the progress of what the fix is going to be.
So you're in committee meetings till 7 o'clock, and the public speaks guy signed up. How are you gonna get to that guy before we start the meeting, talk about his problem?
Yeah, so if you have a sign-up sheet where they could, well,
You can't.
Sometimes you can, sometimes you
No, I
can't.
mean, if we meet till like, the committee meeting's till 2 minutes till 7, and we meet in 2 minutes, how you gonna get to that constituent and tell him?
so I would say that if we're not able to get to them on Monday night, we can, if we have a form where if you, similar to See Click Fix, which is.
Yeah, but he's signing up for public speaking, John.
Yeah, but if we have a sign-up sheet that says, do you have a problem in the city? Put your name, your address, the problem that you're having. Either we or Jill and the girls can reach out to them and say, I'm gonna have, all right, you got a road that's crumbling. I'm gonna have the street department come out and take a look at it. And we then coordinate that, where we send that email to the department and say.
But you said, you wanted to meet with them before the council.
Well, I
meeting.
try to do that.
But
I
you
look.
can't, you don't have time.
Sometimes you can't, sometimes you can't. And so then they would have to stay.
But they're signed up for public speak, so they're not allowed to
So,
public speak?
yeah, but I guess the change, the proposed rule change is that you would have public speaks be on agenda items specifically. And so they wouldn't be signing up for public speaks if they don't have an issue with the agenda. They can fill out something that says, this is the problem that I have, here's my contact information to get that problem addressed. And if we have time before the meeting, we can talk to them. If not, Jill or we can call them the next day, go over the issue. But the issue still gets addressed. It just reserves public speaks to similar to the way that when we do I think it's an annexation, or we do a replat, we have the public hearing where we announce, are you here to speak for or against it? Are you here to speak for or against it? Somebody gets up, they say, yes, I'm for it, or no, I'm against it. Public speaks is that for the third reading ordinances that we're voting on. That's really what public speaks is. That is the intended purpose. It is not necessarily what it is now, but that is what the spirit of public speaks is. And that's why it is important.
We could even prioritize agenda items first, because those are pressing, if we're gonna pass something. Kirkwood is not able to make it, she was trying. but
Yeah.
She's just not gonna be able to get this time, she's in New York.
Who's that?
Clerkwood's not gonna be able to make it.
Who?
Clerkwood
Oh.
is not gonna, she wanted to try to make it, but she just got back from out of state, so she was letting us know.
So thoughts on the,
So I think work sessions are good. The only thing that upsets me is the people that were on the text messages saying that they couldn't make this night or that night, still don't have their ass here.
Rob's here.
Well, just one of four. No, you're a good guy. But,
you know what?
But I think you have to keep the dialogue open and you have to keep going with this, because I kind of feel like myself, Member Sacco and Member Babcock, kind of like agreeing with each other right now about certain things, and kind of feel like that I think we really need to entertain more conversations and get Chris and some of the others involved to see what they're thinking. Rob, you had something you wanted to say? I wish you would just jump in there and say.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, when John kept saying contact, or the contacts, I think that's where you're getting hung up, we're not contacts. I mean, they call us, but they expect us to do something.
Sure.
I had a lady call me today, she owns a house over on Rising. 2 cars mysteriously showed up in the lot beside her house. And they've been wrecked or whatever, and somebody just abandoned them there. She doesn't know who to call about.
So she reaches out to
So
the
she
local
reaches out
council
to me, so
because
I
you're the
have to call
liaison.
her.
Yeah, well, but
That's
see,
what we do all the time.
That's my point though.
But I also get what John's saying, I'm not the one that's gonna tow those cars.
Correct, but you didn't refer her to somebody else. You handled.
No, I
you
guess.
took, you took care
So
of her
Frank,
situation.
I
So
think,
in that
As I
woman's
do, I
mind,
don't tell anybody, well, don't call me, call me.
right,
Yeah.
but in that woman's mind, Rob Fisher took care of that problem.
well, Frank, that's not what
I
I'm saying.
know,
The
it's-
liaison role is that when somebody has a problem, they don't know who to go to, they go to us, because they know us. They have our numbers, they know where we live.
Well,
And then we connect.
I a lot of times call people myself, you know, I'll call the road department or I'll
Yeah.
call, but sometimes your problem is so complicated, I actually say, no, you need to talk to Director Perry.
Yes.
Okay, you need to talk to her.
Yes.
And, you know, I can't, this is pretty high up, so I do both.
Right.
I do both.
Mhm.
I do whatever is necessary to try to solve the problem, whether it's me getting involved or me driving out there, like you have to look and see what we have, because sometimes you have to, because
Yeah.
you're not sure what's happening. But I do have to go, but I wanna just real quick, there's one other little proposal,
Yeah.
let's talk about that real quick before I have to leave. There's just one other thought, again, these are all just thoughts, I think the earlier rule changes were all things that were kind of straightforward. And these are certainly more things to think about and chew on, and, you know, think about how, but we have one other.
So, is it section D?
D, yeah.
Section D. So 3 minutes is our public speaks amount, time allotted. We take that to 2 minutes. So the idea behind 2 minutes is we regularly have where somebody gets to say a minute and a half, and then they still have a minute and a half. It's, well, you know, what do I talk about? If there is a issue with something that's on the agenda, sometimes it is easier for us to be able to know what a person's opinion is on something that we're getting ready to do. If it's precise and efficient, it's more effective for us to understand that this person supports this, or this is why they like it and why they don't like it. So it can make the actual public speaks a more effective way of us better understanding what it is that they are wanting us to do or not do.
I'm against that all of
I think
100%.
some people have a hard time speaking, so.
So leave it at 3.
2 minutes, please give them 3 minutes, because sometimes they're not sure how to address people, they're confused.
They're nervous.
What?
They're nervous.
They're nervous, so I don't wanna take any time from anybody.
Yep.
So, I don't.
And sometimes it takes 3 minutes to tell you. Sometimes what they're trying to tell you is complicated.
And I think that, for me, of all of them, I like the items on the agenda rather than just having it be brought. I think that's an important one, because our roles are, on Monday nights, are approving or rejecting what's on the agenda. And it is a time for the public to voice to us how they feel about legislation we're doing. I think the one time every 2 meetings, one time every 4 meetings is something to give serious consideration to allow a more free flow of participation of people who don't normally come to city council meetings. But purpose of the work session is to discuss these things rather than putting them up for a vote. So if there's not a consensus of these things, you know,
Well,
what we're doing this for.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough members to get a good consensus,
We can only
to be honest with you.
see where we're all at. So,
I'm just gonna suggest
Yeah.
real quick, that some of the things that we talked about earlier seem to be less, to have less discussion. So maybe one of the things that I can work on with the law director is drafting those rule changes proposed for our rules committee, you know, about, are we going to, take out this consensus thing, you know, language, are we, you know, and get those ready, so that those are actually in written form for people, and that way, when we do have a rules committee meeting, when that time comes, they'll have those before them, and then not prepare anything on Rule 15, because that's still a fluid discussion that we're having a conversation about, other than, I believe we all were okay with, adding some things to E, you know, to clean up that language, to add the racial slurs and some of the disruption language. I think everyone, so at least, not that nobody's, we don't have to vote for it, but we'd at least have those things in writing that everyone could look at and, consider, and then prepare nothing else other than that, and then just let more discussion go forward after tonight. Does that sound fair? And that way you'll have stuff in writing.
all good.
Yep.
Anything else stick out to you?